Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get enough love.
Hello, good people. I go by the name of Jordan Holmes, aka Dxtr Spits, and you are now tuning in to the How Men Cry podcast. Essentially, the How Men Cry campaign and project is aiming to get men to talk more comfortably about vulnerability and mental health. We are aiming to get 1,000 men to submit stories and have discussions around vulnerability and just the importance of tuning in to our own mental health. And today, it is my pleasure to introduce Brandon Peele, who will be coming on to talk about his experience with vulnerability. So I'll bring you into the room. How are you today, good sir?
Good question. How am I? I am tired, happy, and sad at the same time.
Man, that's basically where I'm at today. So I'm glad, I'm glad that feeling's mutual. So just to let the folks know who you are, could you provide just a brief intro of yourself, the work that you do, and any kind of fun fact that you want to introduce?
Oh boy. Brief? All right. Okay. So I'm crazy about purpose. I write books and lead programs and get keynotes on that. Crazy about men's work. Crazy about men, like really stepping into authentic masculinity. And I'm developing a new fondness, craziness for this, for the purpose of this country, which is somewhat well articulated, but very poorly consecrated. And
well said.
Right. So I write a lot about like how we can actually save this nation from imploding. So I got a new book coming out about that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to pick up a copy. I'm curious to know what your ideas are because I'm fresh out of them. At this point, I'm going to shift a little bit. The sun is not trying to leave me alone. Okay. So yeah, just to kind of dive right in, what does the word vulnerability mean to you?
First word is truth. It's showing up with what's so. For me, it's what's going on in my body, my physical body, my emotional pain body. It's sharing, what I care about and why I care about that. And usually it's because of something I lost or was neglected, or deprived of. I might add, it's also like knowing that looking bad is totally fine. Like everybody looks bad. So just like be okay with that.
No, that's awesome. How do you feel like your connection with vulnerability ties into your life, into your personal life and your maybe personal relationships? Do you feel like it's something that's coming up often for you?
It didn't always. I grew up outside of Chicago, and it wasn't. It was live from the neck up, talk about things and business and sports, and and because I actually remember this is probably like right at the beginning of my journey, my late 20s. I was at a bar with a buddy in Chicago, and what I mean by my journey, like first time kind of doing work on myself.
Sure.
I was kind of like shoulder to shoulder with this guy, and I said, like we lived in the same house together for like 4 years, and we were roommates, and we've done all these great trips together, but I don't know anything about you. So we've never once talked about anything that like was over there.
Like with any type of depth to it, just all
depth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, he's like, huh. And then that was it.
What's really funny about that though is I was just kind of having a conversation about how like unfortunately that's probably the case amongst a lot of men. And I think even some of the outlooks towards what it really means to be vulnerable is so buried down, that that ends up being the connection point is around something surface level that might be a distraction, that doesn't it's basically so you never have to go to a layer lower than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
So after that conversation, do you feel like y'all's relationship changed, or do you feel like it kind of maintained the same and you had to find that elsewhere? And I'm gonna cut my cam for 1 second, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I wasn't living in Chicago. I was just visiting. So this was kind of more like a young man, childhood friend of sorts. But I would say that the relationships that I've built in the Bay Area now down here in we're straight. I mean, like it's like folks are tapped in. They're doing work. Oftentimes they're also sitting in men's or women's circles. So, yeah, we can share heartbreak.
Yeah.
And that's, this is a really unique time to start, or not start, but to have a conversation like this because we're in a pandemic and we have to we have to be with our stuff like in ways that we haven't been able to before. And for me, it's like, I am constantly heartbroken. It's like, I don't know. It's like it's oftentimes related to like documentaries I'm watching or news or books. Like about a third of the way through Indigenous Peoples' History of America, I'm like,
overload. Yeah.
Oh.
Let me not to cut in too much, but let me kind of flip that question a bit then. So how do you remain hopeful when taking in all of those inputs and stay inspired to do the type of work that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I think the vulnerability capacity really is being willing to feel, right? And yes, it means opening at least me, I'm opening myself up to the world's heartbreak, to two genocides and an apartheid that I'm currently complicit in perpetuating, right?
Yeah.
And it also has opened me up to what I care about, so my purpose. So every morning I sit in front of this little altar down here that you can't see, but and reconnect with ancestors, reconnect with spirit, purpose. I will share though that whatever linearity I mistakenly presumed before the pandemic, like that's just it's all gone now. Like like I feel like we're in this place of either like reformation or dissolution, and it's really all I have, frankly, because Martin Luther King's moral arc of the universe. Yes, I know I feel it in my heart it bends towards justice, and man, I got white supremacists in my neighborhood. So it's really just my morning purpose ritual and having like great, authentic, vulnerable relationships to get into.
No, I love that. And was that a practice that you had before the pandemic? Because that may be a bit of a two-part question. The first quick part is, one, is that a question practice that you had before the pandemic? And then secondly would be, did you find any difficulties with your mental health space during the pandemic?
So answer the first question is yes, it began well before. So I went through purpose discovery work in 2011, 2012. I did Mankind Project stuff back in 2005. So was able to get some sense of mission, but I didn't have a ritual until 2012. And that was where like every morning connecting with my purpose statement. And then it began with like 3 minutes and now it's like closer to like 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Cause I just gotta like marinate into it. And now the pandemic, I don't think the pandemic did anything new to me per se, other than strip away my one of my like the main things I love, and that's just like mixing it up with people on street festivals and talking with people and put my arm around people and like and I mean people I don't know. So I didn't have
Sure,
that
yeah.
ability to like connect with other folks. Neither did anybody else, but for me that was like a missing, obviously. I think the pandemic provided a beautiful kind of outer context or prerequisite for George Floyd's murder. So had life just been going, in hyperspeed, like it was before when George was murdered, like I might not have given myself a whole week to lay down on the couch.
Yeah.
And be that.
Yeah.
And so I would say that I let in more pain because the cycles were slower. I let in more of the heartbreak.
Yeah.
I would. Oh, the other thing is like Men's Circle moved from live, sitting around a circle with 12 other guys to Zoom boxes, and I was like, "This sucks. I do not want to do this at all."
Yeah, I'm so zoomed out. Like lately, the other episodes of this podcast we're doing in person with these like box it out sessions of, having guys come and box a bit and then kind of talk about things. And you're right. I mean, even just that subtle adjustment of like, oh, hey, like this is what it's like to laugh in the same room with this person, we're actually building and around this work too. I feel like it's so delicate, would be kind of the best word, because guys are at all different, levels within this work. And yeah, I think that part is challenging to do. Something I'm actually working on is a series of kind of workshops. And I think we've maybe chatted about it a bit, like kind of centered around things like this, because it's necessary. And I think physically being able to see, individuals that you can relate to that have some of those same struggles and, are going through those vulnerable points. I mean, it makes a huge difference, especially with youth. That's definitely one, especially for, youth. So switching gears a little bit, not too far, but would you be comfortable expressing or talking about a time that you had to show vulnerability or cry? Might be a little easier for you than some. You seem to be quite aware.
Oh man, I mean, I'm now that person that cries at commercials. So I'm like, it's the dad and the dog.
No, yeah, same.
Yeah, my wife and I, we joke sometimes. I'm the woman in the marriage because I'm so like I want to do a deep check-in at the end of the day, and we so anyways, I'll get to your point. I would say the first time that I really cried, because I pushed all that stuff down when I got to be junior high. Like I had a number of like fist fights and stuff. It was outside Chicago with sons of gangsters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to fight without doing like the Ralphie from Christmas Story crying like
full on flail, just throw
full on flail,
everything you got.
But I gotta say it was in the aftermath of my brother's passing. So my brother was killed in a car accident when he was almost 17. Right there on Route 83 in Oak Brook, Hinsdale area. And of course, just grieving and crying that night with my dad. But there was I want to share a couple like subsequent moments that were triggered by this. And there was, two guys that were very much just like me. One guy from high school, one guy from college. And I remember we used to do this really stupid thing. It's called bus palos. And so we'd, four white guys in a car, turn up hip hop, turn our lights off, and go through Palos Forest Preserve with no lights on. Like, don't do that. It's a bad idea. But we used to do that. And I was sitting in the back, and I just was overcome by sadness, by grief. And my buddy Anthony, he was driving and just put his hand behind me, just like kind of held my calf because he knew, because he has a younger brother who's my brother's age.
Yeah.
And another similar situation with my buddy Brian. Like, this was in college, so we had some beers in us, and I was just I broke down, and he just, arm around me and let me cry on his shoulder. And
That's yeah, no, it's awesome. And thank you for even just sharing those very intimate and very, deep moments. And also my condolences for that. That's a heavy bit of tragedy to take on, especially, with someone at such a young age. So, thank you for just being brave enough to be vulnerable, and talk about that. So,
yeah.
Now, do you, maybe in another or a little addition to that is like, do you feel like those moments of crying or releasing, do you feel like you had any struggle with the social pressure around, like, wanting to withhold crying? Or do you feel like maybe in your, experience in life, it hasn't been, so much social pressure where you felt comfortable even then?
Yeah, I mean, high school and college, I don't know if there was social pressure, just nobody cried about anything.
Yeah.
So just, there was nobody, it was assumed, at least in this patriarchal thing, like, you just were done crying in junior high, and then, like, you would cry again at a wedding or a funeral, and that would be it. It's just no more guy crying ever. Because we never talked about it. We're not like, why don't we cry? Should we cry? I would say that the broader kind of emotional diversity of life, that was very much heavily managed by my dad and other kind of, guys like me who played sports. It was just like, suck it up, rub some dirt on it, get back on the field, that sort of stuff. And just really anything that didn't fit in this tiny box, the success box, the man box of, like, success and ripped and strong and smart and all that. We made fun of that. That lived in this other box that was called weird or gay or whatever. And emotions were over there too. So it was creativity, it was our body, it was pleasure, it was joy, it was sadness, all the things that provide depth and richness to life. We just, like, somehow conditioned ourselves to, like, not have that be part of our life. Yeah.
Now, what changed? Because as I see you, today, and I think the sun keeps chasing me. It's fine. I'm just going to be super bright. For the listeners, you'll have to come see the video so you can see me getting the lights shine down upon me. But so what changed in you? Because you're tremendously aware and talk about these things comfortably. I mean, even within, we've had a conversation prior to this, and it flows out very, very naturally for you. So do you feel like it was a gradual process, or, a kind of shift in life, or what do you feel like changed that had you change your relationship?
I mean, I think there were a couple things that shifted. One, with my brother's death, my mom insisted that summer after school. So I went down to U of I down in Champaign and came back up. My mom's like, you are going to go to therapy once a week.
Great. Yeah.
And I don't know, this therapist was amazing. She just like, keep poking me. Like, tell me about that and tell me about this. And I'm like, like slot.
It happened to me too. Don't worry.
Yeah. but so I did that for, this was when I was 19. So I had luckily had at least the experience of, like, being somebody who cried as a man, or as really. But it was probably my like right in my late 20s, I started to do inner work, and that's very shortly thereafter I did landmark work. Cried my eyes out in the landmark forum, because they have you call your family and, like, clean things up, and sobbing mess, and also the Mankind Project. So that I know you know a little bit about them, but like what was so healing for me is that they leverage some native kind of psychological archetypes. So like that, it's not just about man as thinker, as doer, as creator, as builder, protector, but there's more archetypes. There's the connection to the sacred masculine, to the divine feminine below, to the lover energy, you know, the play, joy, innocence, sadness, you know, warrior, which, you know, we all know pretty well, which is protecting what you care about. But then also the magician. It's like, I don't know, like I need to go in, like inward or out into the mysteries to figure out what's next and who I am in the face of what I'm dealing with. And then the king. So like, you know, that book, Lover, King, Warrior, Magician, a lot more. And so like that framework basically just, you know, it's very much a blunt instrument, but it allowed me to say, oh, it's okay to have sadness and joy. It's okay to take a stand. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be wise. It's okay to like assume, you know, some kind of sovereign ownership in terms of my life and the people I'm leading. And so that basically native psychology, for lack of a better word, had me at least have an intellectual construct for all the emotions that need to flow through it. So shame, sadness, fear, you know, anxiety, all that.
Yeah. So you've really been, I mean, you've truly been on the journey for a lot of your life, which I think is great, especially around, you know, getting into therapy early on, you know, for something like that. I think that's such a beautiful, impactful thing, especially around those periods in time, because in the teenage years and before, I mean, it's already so much turmoil just from growing up. So that's pretty cool, you know, that it's kind of like you've like taken further and further steps at these different levels on your healing journey. I think that's really awesome. A question that definitely comes to mind is, so when I say how men cry, I don't necessarily mean that crying is always in the form of tears. You know, I feel that men cry out oftentimes through different type of actions that I think are kind of perceived, maybe even sometimes as being malicious, you know, or negative or something like that. But in reality, the way that I've kind of shifted my own paradigm is like, oh, that's actually a person who's hurting in some way, and, you know, haven't kind of found their way to it. So are there things that you've maybe seen or kind of witnessed, or even within yourself, you know, that you feel like maybe you've cried out in ways when you weren't able to express, you know, through tears? Or it doesn't have to be your story. It can be others. Like I said, it sounds like you're definitely in tune.
Yeah. So, I mean, so much of all of our emotional experiences, especially men's emotional experiences, like we're gaslit for it. We're told like, no, you know, wipe it off. It's fine. You're gonna be fine. Or, you know, or they'll try to comfort us really quickly so they don't have to witness us be anything other than, you know, strong and happy or whatever. And so I think a lot of those like repressed pieces get bundled up. So like I've experienced myself and in others, like facilitating men's work, that there's like a really intimate connection between anger and sadness.
Absolutely.
And love, you know, because you don't get angry over something that you don't care about.
Absolutely.
You don't get angry over something that there isn't sadness and grief and mourning also there, whether or not you're voicing a physical violation, like I'm disrespected or pushed or punched or something like that. But more often than not, it's something I really care about. Like when I see somebody like yelling at their kids on the train, I'm like, oh man,
yeah,
I care about kids, and I'm like, oh, and I don't have the relationship, I don't have the relatedness, especially if they're not looking like me. I don't have the place to be giving any parenting advice, right?
Yeah.
But it you know, it comes up like I'm angry, like an injustice is happening or has just happened. So like for me, I process both in men's circle, but also like every morning when I'm writing, I one of the first questions I asked myself is like, what am I angry about? And then it just flows out, and it's ugly and untransformed, and there's F-bombs and all this kind of stuff. And then it helps me get to like what I care about. It's like, oh yeah, I'm sad, I'm heartbroken, I'm ashamed, I feel guilt. And it's because this thing I care about isn't being properly developed or cared for.
Yeah. Oh, I love that process, because I've actually, I've struggled a lot with just depression, and a pretty, severe depression at a bunch of different points in life. And one of the things that's been my saving grace is this behavior of introducing routines, and essentially routines are just means of me kind of going into the day centered, and then leaving out of the day centered whenever possible. Not perfect at that, still working on it. But I love that kind of line of questioning of just really beginning the day with like awareness, where am I at, and checking in. I don't know if you're familiar with a process called RAIN, but that's what it makes me think of, which is recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture, and or not identify, which is like a means of kind of processing difficult feelings. And that sounds very similar to kind of that method that you're using. So that's like really, really awesome. So you do you have kids?
Not yet.
I don't think I've asked that question. Okay. Because, well, maybe this is a future one, because I was going to kind of think, how do you think you would want to bring a kid into this world in connection, to these conversations and like vulnerability? Maybe if there's like a fundamental thing or two that you think is really vital that you would want to share with youth of yours or someone else's.
Yeah. I'm just like already laughing.
You're like, how much
like,
time?
oh yeah, great. I want to listen to this guy who's got no kids to talk about this. So what I've learned from talking to other dads, other moms, is that a few kind of critical things that a parent can do that I am going to choose to do when I have the opportunity. And that's like give full presence by also mirroring what's happening. So, kids are experiencing things, and then, mirroring without basically judgment. Like, I see that you're sad. Is that sadness? Like, yeah, I'm sad, Dad. Well, tell me about that. How's it feel? Where's it in your body? Like, so
brilliant.
Landing it in the body is so important, because then they can build that somatic emotional awareness. I think the other thing that was not present for me growing up, but something that I've come to value a great deal, primarily because of that, is blessing. Like, not Omni Patri, Catholic blessing, but like when you see somebody's gifts, with child or not, but especially powerful for children, to name them, like, wow, that made a big impact.
Yeah.
That I've never seen anything like that. That blew me away, without necessarily moralizing, saying good boy, good girl, like none of that. Like, wow, holy cow, do more of that. That was amazing.
Yeah, just genuine, that genuine support. And something about that for sure is like the tone of that internal voice is what I realize is like so powerful. And that's something that I've had to develop in adulthood, is like realizing what that internal voice sounds like, especially if you've had, households where maybe the speech isn't very positive, or there's a lot of, I'll say one thing within the Black culture, and in particular, we talk a lot of shit, man. I mean, just to be real, there's like a lot of, I think, sometimes playfulness in how we chat, and I think that's been a coping mechanism at different times for people of color, is to kind of keep things light enough. But one thing that I've realized in my own experience is when all the environments kind of feel like that, or when a lot of them feel like that, the internal tone that one can take on is one that's a little more negative and a little more defeating, just from these like constant little digs here and there. So I think that was just very powerful in terms of something. And so if you do have those kids, I think you'll be ready. But that's coming from a guy that has no children. So that may mean nothing. Yeah, I'm like, go raise those kids. Let me know how it's turning out. I may do so eventually, but it's not the move right now. Mm-hmm. So here's a question that you can answer however you see fit, and this can be long form, short form, one word or so. I'm just going to give myself one little shift. You guys are seeing my whole messy place because the sun is literally in my face like no one has. I mean, I never shoot another one of these at 6 p.m. So, or at least not here. But what do you think the world needs more of from men?
That's such a beautiful question. It's all the things, right? It's we need to be doing inner work, looking at our own software, basically, upgrading it. You know, men are really good at upgrading hardware, like new girlfriend, new job, new car. But like, no, you got to reboot. Whether it's therapy or hallucinogens or men's work, I mean, you got to take care of that software too. And I mean, within that is curiosity and humility. Like, get really curious about who you are and why you feel so strongly about the things we feel strongly about. And you know, one of my good buddies, you know, he like the word patriarchy now like gets used almost entirely in a negative sense, right? It's like, but what it really means is like is to father something, to protect and care, and to what, regardless of whether or not men take on that word, to take on the role of steward, like legitimate steward, not just taking care of yourself and your family, but like, I'm responsible for this block. Yeah, like, I'm responsible for, you know, this community. Regardless of whether or not anyone's elected you or pays you to do it, just like to declare yourself responsible because you care.
Yeah.
Like, people always give me shit all the time. Sorry, I just swore in here.
Oh, I don't care. I think I've cursed too. I haven't even made up the rules on if you can curse or not. So say whatever you want.
People are always like, you know, why do you care so much? Like, you know, nobody elected you, you know, keep your opinions to yourself. I'm like, I am declaring myself responsible, which means on my watch. And I'm going to stand up for this because because I say so. Yeah. It's not because I come with any authority or divine appointment from God or anything like that. Like, it's in my heart. So like, I want men to get curious, find out what's inside, what breaks their heart, their purpose, their mission. Because that's what the world needs. Men, they need men fully activated, not these like kind of, you know, neck up, super tiny, you know, human doings that are just kicking the can down the road. I mean, we got serious problems. You know, 100 people there getting shot in Chicago. The heat. Yeah. I mean, climate change, rape culture, political. I mean, you name it. Like, everything is.
You're like, just pick a thing and
pick a thing. Well, yeah, I mean,
we don't.
Yeah, not pick anything. Pick what's yours to do, and that means doing some deeper work. Because I'm a purpose guy. I trained in this work, and it's my experience and conviction that yes, the world demands something newly of all of us right now, and there's a unique personal response that each person, each man has inside of him. Yeah. So it might mean, you know, the environment. It might mean fixing systemic racism, but you'll know because it's in there. What's in there is definitely not a dead zone. It's definitely not like, hey, go move to suburbs, procreate, move to Florida and die. What's in there is like, you came here to do a thing, like, go do it.
Yeah. No, so. I love that. And one of the words that you use that was broken down to me, and it's so simple, is the word responsible. And basically, they said if you just break down the word, it's response able to respond, basically. And I think it was just such a simple adjustment of how the word is being presented. But I think that's kind of a bit of, what's even motivated me is like I have the ability to respond, and even within my own, purpose, like finding ways to be able to do work like this, and try to bring these conversations to the surface, because I was at a crossroads even personally of like, yeah, I can release a bunch more music. I can, continue in certain paths, and I'll still do those things. But I made like a bit of a mental shift, around this project, and just kind of feeling like, a lot of these conversations just can't wait, and even if this just provides some insight where, some guy just thinks a little bit differently about how he's moving in the world, then I feel good about it. And yeah, I mean, I really, really like that answer, and just that approach. So it makes sense on, on why you're so purpose driven. I mean, you really, really speak it into life. So could you let the listeners at home know where they could find more info about you, or anything upcoming that you want to spotlight before we sign off here?
Oh, thank you. And first, I just want to acknowledge you for doing this. Like, this is the conversation. Like, men and all of our areas for growth are at the heart of so many of these crises. I mean, you just think about all the amazing legislation just sitting on the desk in the Senate.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. Like, it's not like we're scratching our head. How do we fix race? How do we fix the climate? How do we fix healthcare? Like,
Yeah.
sitting there on the desk, just sign it. But there's white guys, mostly white guys, who aren't signing it.
They're like, nah. It's Friday.
But seriously, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
For the men listening, like, this is it. Like, yes, we can give our word. We can try to do something different. But if we're not willing to go within and to bring our fullness out, because, and this is my edge, like finding a healthy way to express my righteous outrage, because I can go full on like Kali, just fire hose, burn it all. So anyways, Jordan, thank you for doing this. Like, keep this going. This is amazing. Yeah. So, for the most part, I don't do much anymore outside of try to activate purpose and empathy and inclusion in organizations. And
Nice.
you can learn more about that at unitylab.co. Occasionally, I still give a keynote. As mentioned earlier, I'm writing a new book about the role that organizations play in basically sandboxing culture, so that our country can be, e pluribus unum, stand for each other as opposed to against each other.
Yeah. No, I love it. Just thank you again so much for your time, just for all the amazing gems and jewels. I mean, just really very in-depth, aware answers. And I appreciate just how I picked it up a bit from one of our first conversations, but I can, really, really see how deeply a lot of this stuff moves and motivates you. So just thank you again for taking the time out to chat and, build on this stuff.
You got it, Jordan. Thank you. You're doing great work.
Appreciate it. So any of the listeners at home, if you want to find out more, you can visit howmencry.com or the How Men Cry Instagram page. If you want to join the podcast, not that difficult. You can shoot me a DM or anything on those pages. Or if you just want to submit a story in the means of with an image and with a story about your own connection with vulnerability, there's a form to do so on our page at How Men Cry as well. We are looking to get 1,000 men to be brave enough to talk about their experience with vulnerability. So thank you all for tuning in, and we're signing off.
Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get enough love.